We've all been stuck in ruts. Anyone who truly appreciates a medium has, in one way or another, witnessed its death. Whether it's literature, movies, music, comics, games, we're all long past the vastly experimental stages of each entertainment media as art form. And we've grown to take them as repetitive commercial pieces of shit. Big budgeted things that come out every year without a single scrap of originality, without any sort of heart or yearning to deliver something new to the table. Because God help us all if someone gets their fifis in a twist for daring to introduce something new to the medium. I've said in previous videos that we need more games that fuck with the player, messing with the player's feelings, making them uncomfortable, scared out of bounds across uncharted territory. Just because you don't want anyone to drown, it doesn't mean that you have to keep them all in the kiddie pool. One of the most famous attempts at this was Metal Gear Solid 2. After a highly successful game on the PS1, everyone was awaiting further action hero adventures with a gruff badass that made them feel powerful. The creator's response was to shove them into the role of a sissy-looking rookie, and make them deal with deconstruction of the first title, PTSD, government manipulation, and the internet's role in humanity's bleak future. Hideo Kojima chose to make people uncomfortable, to make them think, to have them question what was true and what wasn't. It was a game that dared you to think, by tricking the player several times through its entirety. By the time the game ends, there's a sensation of relief. Not that things have gotten better, not that you could have saved the world in any way, but that there's some sort of way in which things could get better. And without beating you over the head with an overly simplistic political rant, the game made you think about the world around you and how it worked. And this wasn't exclusive to one single game. Plenty of titles in the late 90s to early 2000s attempted to screw with the player through their interactivity and themes. It was a plentiful period, where tons of developers felt like games were becoming a wonderful platform to explore entertainment in ways never seen before. But we don't see much of that nowadays. And like anyone who follows the industry and its latest titles, there are times in which I think I should give up on games, because none of them feel entertaining or enjoyable. Well, sure, the game is there, but playing through it doesn't interest me in the least. The same thing can happen to anyone even barely interested in the movie scene. After the 20th Marvel movie, is there anything that entertains us anymore? I felt burnt out, without much hope for anything to impress me. And then there was the Silver Case. It would be impossible for me to get into this game without first contextualizing it and its creator, Suda51. Known for being a sort of punk star of gaming with titles such as Killer 7 and No More Heroes, Suda is known on the industry for his unconventional approaches to gameplay and story, and for his Tarantino-styled bloody aesthetics. His games usually feature themes of killing and sociopathy. Goichi Suda was working as an undertaker and a mortician when the Japanese arcade culture was booming. He accepted a position working on wrestling games for human entertainment, thinking that he could bring something to games. His second title, Fire Pro Wrestling Special, ended in an unusual way. After the protagonist defeats the final boss and has achieved his ultimate goal of glory and riches, he kills himself, realizing that fighting was the only thing keeping him from a deep depression. Games don't do this, but Suda did. By stretching the boundaries of what was normal or acceptable in a game and making its titles take twists and turns through irregular design logic, presentation, and even sound, Suda made it so that all of his projects had a distinctive quality of style and signature. Killer 7, considered by many his magnum opus, joins supernatural political intrigue with an on-rails shooter mechanic, mixing various degrees of presentation and aesthetics to fulfill a masterfully crafted story that makes better war commentary than every single first-person shooter game combined. The visuals, structure, narrative, and all of its elements combine to form a perfect package that has made its mark over the years. No More Heroes took a different approach, and served instead as a criticism to empty consumerism of fan culture. Like Hideki Anno did in anime, Suda manages to turn the act of collectibles and fighting for glory into a completely soulless process. The game's stakes decrease in intensity, and the main character grows more and more pathetic throughout the game, as his quest for pussy is no more than an asshole otaku's attempt to be cool. But the game I want to talk about is something else entirely. In 1999, thanks to a lack of budget and means, Suda's first game with a newly formed Grasshopper manufacturer was The Silver Case, a visual novel that mixed the usual talking head portions expected from visual novels with small playable 3D sections and live action footage. The release was quite limited in Japan, and it never came out overseas, until a high-definition remaster using the Unity engine was developed and released this year on Steam, and soon to be on the PlayStation 4 platform. The Silver Case starts out as a hard-boiled crime story with unusual aesthetics. The player does not have access to the entire screen, and small windows into the story, alongside the stylized art pieces and scrolling machine-type text, are the ways into which the game exposes itself to the player. The aesthetics take the player through a certain journey of uncomfortableness before finding their footing within the game's own logic and style, after which it just fits like a glove. The few controllable segments with simplistic puzzles are clunky and awkward in a good way. Early on, the game actually forces you to take out a pen and pad and write down several passwords for later. While at first this seemed to be a very bad way to present itself, it dawned on me that no other game I remembered playing lately actually asked me for this level of commitment and roleplay. This kept me going. It amazed me that the game took me out of my comfort zone to seek something to write with. It's an outrageous request for anyone playing a video game in 2016 to do something out of the ordinary that forces them to put down the controller. But I did it, because this was different, and it intrigued me. The game's narrative is what you play it for, and it's absolutely stellar, entirely due to its presentation. Divided into the perspectives of its two main characters, the story will take you through the daily lives of the silent named protagonist, who works as a detective, and Tokyo Morishima, a journalist. Originally intended as a companion piece, Tokyo's story takes a life of its own and prevails in a more human sense, taking the player through the daily life of a lazy journalist trying to get to the bottom of a mystery that will end up engulfing the entire world's perception. Tokyo's stories, instead of featuring an overarching, more grandiose crime narrative like the protagonist's, focus on the perception of grand events through waking up every day in the couch of a tiny apartment, feeding your turtle, and checking your emails. The mundane becomes the comfortable. This protagonist goes through life crisis, complains about minor hassles, and goes to the bar to drown his sorrows. It's the perfect counterpart to the Japanese noir narrative that takes us through crimes involving cults, the Y2K scare, childhood traumas, and a lot of really well done and personal affairs. The game constantly changes the format of its presentation, manipulating the player's feelings expertly and making sure that we never go down easy, that there's always something new around the corner. The 90s aesthetics and concepts have aged like a charm, and there's this newfound style that is an absolute breath of fresh air when compared to just about anything these days. At a time and age when I felt completely uninterested in video games, The Silver Case was an experience that got me hooked and blew me away. Because it didn't offer cheap thrills and easy entertainment. It made me think and feel. It's punk, it's out of bounds. It's the kind of thing only a demented mind like Suda51 could offer. Here's to the post-future. Kill the past.